Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Fake Nerds Watch for Star Trek Picard. This is Star Trek Picard Season 3. We're going to be talking about Episode 9, Vox. I am Brandon T. McClure for the Fake Nerd Podcast. With me on this track, as always, is Cookie from Just a Little Podcast. How are you, sir?
Doing fantastic. It is a great time to be a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, it is. There's actually news that we should probably talk about before we get into it. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that first? So before we get into episode 9 Vox, news dropped just today, a couple hours before we started recording, that Section 31 project that has been in development hell for 4 years
is now being real.
It's now happening. What do you think about this?
Oh, man. I mean, okay, so I'm a big component of if you like something, put it out there. And I think that not all Star Trek is for everyone. That's 100%. But the ones that you do like in order for them to continue making more Star Trek, they have to have Star Trek out there. They can't just have one show. They have to have this plethora of shows that in case somebody doesn't like this one, they can go and gravitate to something else and they can watch that. But Star Trek is constantly going on. And I think that was a big thing for Gene Roddenberry. That was his vision of creating this utopia of a world where everybody is just loved and there is this passion for space. And this shows what it is. Like I may not love Section, I don't even want to say that. I don't like them at all. But as a Star Trek fan, as a growing Star Trek fan who likes to learn about these things, I am going to watch it as long as I can. I am going to do my best to watch it and see what it's about and give it the fair shot of, okay, is it for me? Is it not for me? Maybe it is. Maybe it's like, hey, maybe I start to like them. Kind of like a captain that is no longer with us.
So I think that a section. So first off, I right away you have my interest because you're not doing a TV show anymore.
Yes.
I never thought a Section 31 TV show was a good idea.
Correct. It's too long.
Yeah, you get 10 episodes minimum of just what? Just Section 31 doing Section 31 things. I never saw the vision there. And that's not to say anything can't be good. I mean, I'm sure they could have found like an espionage show or whatever, but like I wasn't crazy about it. But making it a movie is a lot more palatable to me where I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I could spend 2 hours with Section 31, especially with an actress who I do like in Michelle Yeoh,
correct,
who is returning as her role of Emperor Philippa Georgiou.
Yes, which that is one of the cool things that I am happy because I did really like her character in Discovery. I really liked her a lot in that. I'm very similar to you with it being not a TV show, but because I am like Michael Kars from the Downright Nerdy podcast, like your shirt says.
Oh yeah, he's on my shirt.
I'm a big fan of 24, and I think that if it was to be a series, making it span over 24 hours in this espionage world where they're trying to solve this crime and they literally have 24 hours to do it, and that's it.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
That'd be kind of interesting. I could see, but again, like I think the more time we spend with Section 31, the less interesting they become.
Yeah.
And I know you've felt it already. Because like in Deep Space Nine, they're probably in like 4 episodes, maybe. Yeah. Like actually, and we hear about them quite a bit throughout the seasons that they're in. They're in Enterprise briefly. They're featured in tons of books. They've been retconned to be, because some of the books have retconned certain Star Trek events to be related to Section 31, which it's kind of interesting. And then they were featured incredibly heavily as the main antagonist of season 2 of Star Trek Discovery.
Yes.
Which for me, what I believe for most fans was the straw that broke the camel's back. Because and they were in Star Trek Into Darkness. Yeah, there's a lot of Section 31.
Since there is a lot, and there's a lot of source material they can use, do you think that making a movie takes away from the mystery of this organization?
I don't think so, because the mystery has already been taken away.
Okay.
It's Discovery really like went into Section 31 and kind of like made them their own. They had their own starships. They had their own kind of section of the military, and it's like, all right. I thought you were just a bunch of guys in a cubicle, messing things up. But making it a movie, I think you have the ability. This is wild speculation of what I would like to see.
Okay.
It's about Emperor Giorgio after she comes back from Discovery season 3, because you remember she was in the future with the Discovery and then came back to a point in the past. We don't know what point in the past.
Correct. Yeah.
That's been left ambiguous up until now. And it could be about her dismantling Section 31. And that's the story. That would
be lovely if that was the case.
So what we could theoretically experience that maybe she showed up in the mid 25th century, not the mid 23rd century, which and so she can be about like, oh, you know what? I'm changed from my experiences with Michael, and I don't want, and it's time that Section 31 should be over.
Yeah.
So there's something to that. We don't know a whole lot more about it other than it's happening and that it's a movie. Mm-hmm. But I'm a little bit more optimistic than if they had announced a show.
I agree.
There's some small nuggets though that I think is interesting. One of them was that Alex Kurtzman said that Section 31 is going to be the start of Phase 2 of Star Trek.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kevin Feige. Let's see what you got.
Right? I mean, I've talked about it before, but he like desperately wanted to be a Kevin Feige person, but with Star Trek. And unfortunately with Star Trek, you don't really get a lot of wiggle room as you do with Marvel. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many different characters in Marvel, and really Star Trek is just kind of the one thing.
Yeah.
Even Star Wars has more flexibility than I think Star Trek has. But what I think was interesting about that was like, yeah, we're going to enter into Phase 2, and we're going to do these more movies. We're going to do more made for streaming movies. Which I was like, okay, yeah, actually, I'm on board with this kind of more bite-sized Star Trek, making like events. Maybe Cookie, I finally get my temporal Cold War movie.
That would be good. That would be really good.
God, can you imagine?
Imagine if they did that. Like, imagine if they legit built events around the releases of these Star Trek movies, kind of like how Star Wars has really perfected that with like Star Wars Day, with May the 4th, like all these different concepts that they have, and they literally do. They used to do it like back before the sequel movies came out. They really used to go really heavy into like the action figures and like, we're gonna release all these things, and here's everything that we're doing, and it's like, it's an event that makes you so energized and so focused on Star Wars. I want that for Star Trek. Like, imagine if they did that with the Cold War. Oh,
they have an issue. They will say that Star Trek does have Star Trek Day.
Yeah, but it's not
in September.
Like, it's not as publicized, I think, as Star Wars does. I think Star Wars really knows how to push.
I think Paramount makes a mistake when they try to push Star Trek like Star Wars.
Really?
I do, because you look at the Kelvin films specifically. Mm-hmm. Each one of those films did worse and worse. And admittedly, that second film was atrocious. But the third film's really good. And it premiered on the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. So theoretically, it should have done really well. But I don't think the Star Trek fandom is in the same numbers as the Star Wars fandom.
Gotcha.
So I don't think it's smart to kind of build around events. I do think doing like one-off movies, made for streaming movies, is a good idea, but but turning them into like event television or event films, I think you're going to run into the same problem that the Kelvin films did.
Gotcha.
And I don't want to see Star Trek go down that path, because Star Trek has been dead before, and I just don't want to see it die again.
Very true.
But yeah, at this point, this will be the second, maybe third spinoff of Star Trek Discovery.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
That is.
Because we have
very weird.
Well, because Strange New Worlds is a spinoff of Star Trek Discovery.
Correct.
The Starfleet Academy series, we're not sure, but it sounds like it's set in the 32nd century, and which would make it a Star Trek Discovery spinoff.
Mm-hmm.
And now this movie.
Very true.
They did it. Star Trek Discovery did it.
Oh man, it's funny.
But why don't we get into the meat of the episode now?
Sounds good, my friend.
All right, so we're going to be talking about Vox, the 9th episode of season 3 of Star Trek Picard, directed by Terry Matalas.
Yes.
Written by Sean Tretta and Kylie Rosetter.
All right.
What'd you think about this?
Oh man, mixed emotions, to be honest with you.
I'm the same way.
Okay. It was like there was some great highs, and there were some terrible lows that I just like, why guys? Why? Anything but this.
So let's start with the beginning of the episode.
Okay.
Where do you start? You start at the beginning.
Yes.
So Deanna and Jack are, they're in their mind, and Jack is talking about what all these vines that we've been seeing mean. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that explanation of like, I appreciate these vines because underneath they're all the same and it's all one tree system, all one root system. That kind of perfection idea. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. But then Deanna opens the door.
Yes, and that was the first bad thing for me that I did not like.
The Borg.
Okay, so one of the things that once they said it, I was like, why did we not see this from the jump? Because they hinted at it so many times throughout the entire show, and exactly what Jack said about this tree. It's like, okay, the tree has these roots have one purpose. It's to go and get nourishment for the entire tree, and the entire tree is one body. Hence what the Borg is. Then you have Starfleet now putting all these systems in place so that every single ship can now interconnect and talk to each other simultaneously. Yeah. The Borg. Then we have 7 of 9 talking about her experience and how her captain doesn't even go and call her by 7 of 9. He calls her by another name.
Shaw's speech about Wolf 359.
Exactly. So there's all these different hints that have just been like peppered throughout the entire series, and it's like, am I that dumb?
No, and you know what? There's another hint that we both missed, and I thought it was just kind of fun music. The end credit scene is the intro to First Contact.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So
the theme that plays at the end of every episode is the music from the beginning of First Contact.
That is so okay. So all of this to say, fantastic writing. Like, you guys really did good writing to make this peppered throughout the entire show. Love it. But the Borg, come on. Yeah. Like, I understand, yes, there's a connection between Next Generation and the Borg, but seriously, guys, like,
there's and I want to be very clear about this. If the Borg had not been featured in the first 2 seasons of this show, I don't think I would have cared as much.
Same. I agree, because it would have been refreshing to have the Next Generation come back and their main villain come back.
Yeah, and I'd be oh my goodness, it's the Borg. We haven't seen the Borg in forever. And like, admittedly, we haven't seen the Collective in a while. Yeah. And since Janeway wiped them out at the end of Star Trek Voyager. And that's fine. That's fair. I'm with you on that one. But and I'm sure that was the thinking of introducing the Borg into the season. Oh, we haven't actually seen the Collective, and that's the difference. Okay, but sure. But we had the Borg and the XBs in the first season with the artifact. Cool, fine. Hugh was there. He dies. Okay. And then we have in the second season this new Borg queen, and then the Jurati Borg, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it was Borg again, and now we're doing Borg again, and I'm like,
yes,
okay, there are other villains.
So many villains they could have picked from.
The Changelings were actually a very interesting villain to put up against the Next Generation cast.
Oh man,
and that's the other thing that bugs me is like, the Changelings were really interesting. I liked Vadic. I thought Vadic was really cool. And I asked you episodes ago, do you think that introducing a bigger bad than Vadic takes away her teeth? And guess what happened?
Yes, you stand corrected. But I think that if it was a different villain, a
Yeah.
different bigger villain, I would be cool with it. But like you said, we've had the Borg so much; it's so saturated that there there's no fun.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I think the next episode is going to be really cool, really action packed. There's going to be a lot of really fun stuff in it. But right now, the way I'm feeling about this is like, really? We're going back to the Borg?
Exactly. It just it rubs me the wrong way heavily. Like I don't know. It's just like why? There's so many different things they could have done. They could have enhanced the story. They could have even said, you know what, screw it. We're gonna keep it the way it is. We're gonna keep it as we're gonna get changelings. Or like you said, bring in Ducat. Bring
Yeah.
him in and just
Ducat would have been
make
incredible.
it would have been fantastic. Bring him in and say, hey, let's just have him as a big bad. He comes back into the show, and that would be perfect. I would have loved that.
Terry Matalas has talked about this reveal and talked about how it was never going to be the Paul Wraiths because it had to be a next generation villain. Sure, fine, I get it. Like you
Mhm.
want a next generation villain for the big next generation team up, but then don't use the changelings.
Yeah, because the changelings weren't that was Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, the changelings. You introduce a Deep Space Nine villain, so we're thinking to ourselves, okay, well, what other Deep Space Nine villains could there be that the next generation crew can go up against? And Picard has a personal stake in
Yeah.
the Cardassians
Yes.
because of his relationship with the Bajorans. Cisco, the first episode, Emissary of Deep Space Nine, has Picard and Cisco talk about the relationship, how important the Bajorans are.
Yes.
And so you have this idea that's there, that's still there in the DNA of Picard, of the Cardassians, and you can just kind of make that Ducat. And there is also something to be said about like, okay, well, it's the next generation crew dealing with the Dominion War because they never did. We never saw it on
We never
screen,
saw. Yeah.
but we know they were there. So there's all these opportunities to bring in other villains. Hell, Klingons. Maybe the
Yeah.
Klingons would have the Romulans. The first season heavily implies that the Romulans are probably still pissed off that their planet was destroyed.
Right.
Maybe they come back and they want some revenge.
Exactly. Like there's so much that they could have done, but in the same essence, the fact that they sprinkled it throughout the entire season. Sorry, the entire series, not even season, because it's season 1, season 2, season 3. We've gotten it all.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, it is what it is now. How are you guys going to really make this thing happen? Like, how are you guys going to make this bad? And it still didn't work for me. Like with Jack, that was the next letdown for me, but we'll get to that as we progress on. But Deanna opening that door, I was upset.
I wouldn't even say I was upset. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I was just
have to open the
disappointed.
door though. It could have been where she goes to reach for the door, and then the door opens up, and then out walks the Borg.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Borg, I want to talk a little bit more. I want to kind of keep it on the Borg, but I don't want to talk about what happens at Frontier Day quite yet.
Okay.
I just want to say we're saying all these bad things about the Borg, about the Borg being in this season, and I will say that like hearing Alice Krieg, the original Queen,
yes,
that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Welcome back, Alice Krieg.
Absolutely. It was really, really exciting to kind of hear her voice and the ominous presence, the universal ominous presence of her like being everywhere was creepy. I will give it that.
I like Alice Krieg a lot as the Borg Queen. And here's the thing, like there's even potential there. Like it is actually a kind of a cool idea to I know I'm kind of giving backhanded compliments. And the thing is, like, I don't, like, show structure is what it is. I don't. The Queen, having been devastated by the events of the end of Star Trek Voyager, and seeing the ramifications of that many years later is interesting to me. I actually do like the idea of revisiting the Queen and the Borg Collective because, you haven't seen Prodigy, but we do see them in Prodigy, not the Collective, but we see a lone Borg cube that's still suffering the effects of what Janeway did. So Janeway did a number on the collective when she left the Delta Quadrant in the end of Star Trek Voyager. And seeing the ramifications of that are interesting to me. But they would be more interesting to me if we hadn't already been dealing with the Borg in any capacity in the first 2 seasons of this very show.
Yeah.
And I think, and I kind of respect a little bit that Terry Matalas was like, no, this was the idea I've had since I was a kid. I'm doing this. This is how it is. I'm running with it. But also maybe you should have corrected, because we're kind of sick of the Borg at this point.
Yeah. I agree. I definitely agree.
But there's some interesting things. So Jack is confronted by Picard. And this is actually a problem I have.
Okay.
Beverly should have been there too.
Yes. It's like, that's your mom.
Yeah. It should have. Picard has this thing. It's like, no. I have to go. I have to talk to this kid. I have to talk to this kid alone. It's like,
why? You
actually, at this point, the two of you need to talk to him.
It's like, we have to come. When you come at it like together as a team front versus as an individual front, it almost seems like mom's not on board, but dad's doing this.
Yeah. And I think that I think the idea that something, you know what? Change sentence. I'm going to say, like, real quickly, that having no scenes with Picard, Beverly, and Jack is getting to be a mistake. Because we haven't actually had a full scene with the three of them, outside of a planning in a meeting room in episode 4, I think.
Okay.
But like having this kind of family moment actually, I think, would have been stronger than just Picard there, because Picard is compromised when it comes to the Borg, and they play that off because they want Jack to run away in the story, so they have Picard be the only person there. But I think at this point we probably needed the two parents to talk to Jack about this. Like, hey, yeah, you're Borg. Sorry. And even and there's good things here. Like Jack is talking about how he always thought that people should be more connected. If we could all just hear in one voice. The Borg kind of DNA in him has manipulated him, but he also has this moment. It's like, but I feel. The Borg don't feel. Where's that come from?
Yeah.
And I like that. I think that's a really good moment. But again, I just think that scene should have been between Picard, Beverly, and Jack, not just Picard and Jack.
I agree. How do you feel about Deanna doing what she did, just running away? Like, I did not like that.
I didn't mind it. I was a little frustrated because I was like, oh my God, we're going to wait a little bit longer for the stupid reveal.
Was my thing, yeah. And it was like, when that happened, of course, commercial hits. And it's like, oh, son of a gun. But I didn't like the fact that she ran away. And it's like, okay, if you are a counselor, that's your patient, you cannot run away. Like, you need to face this on head on, but you need to also be encouraging. Like, when you run away in almost like a fear, that shows like, hey, I can't help my patient out with anything because I don't know what to do at this point. You got to show 100% confidence, whether you have it or not, because they're expecting you to go and be this counselor, this understanding person, to know how they're feeling and know how to cope and deal with it. And she runs off and she's like, let me go tell mommy and daddy, which is I just saw. It's like, come on.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree with that. It's dramatic. It's dramatic tension, right?
Yeah.
That's really all it is for. And you don't want to. I understand. Like, you don't really want to give it that credit. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, if this only happened because of dramatic irony or dramatic not irony effect. But sometimes that's
you have to. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, what was she gonna do, Jack? You're Borg.
No, I think like she could have just stayed there and just like, he's like, what did you see? And she's like, I think this is something that we should discuss like as a family.
Sure. I mean, but honestly, like, I know we've been dealing with the Borg for the past few seasons of the show, but she hasn't. Deanna hasn't.
Yeah.
So this has been like 30 years that she hasn't seen the Borg. so I can imagine it probably gave her quite a shock.
Yeah.
Man. Anyway, I do. There are things I like in this episode.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I know we're kind of going a little hard on it. I was honestly like the first time I watched it. Like I actually really liked this episode the first time I watched it, and I was a little surprised to see that the online reaction was so divisive. Because I'm perpetually online, so I see a bunch of Star Trek people being like, "I didn't like this episode." I did, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what?" But I've seen it 3 times now, and I'm kind of like, "Oh no."
You should have stopped at 1.
I know, right? Okay, so let's go to Jack leaves, and the Titan has a shuttle problem.
Yes.
Does the Titan not have tractor beams?
Again, I think it's for dramatic effect, right?
There are 3 times in this episode. There's 2, but so far this is the second time a shuttle has just left the Titan.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get him back?
And it's gone.
Yeah,
I mean, but you're right. It's dramatic effect. It's he's got to leave, else the story doesn't work.
Not to mention teleporting. I mean,
oh, you want to know something? You want to know probably what is the biggest canon breaking thing that ever happened in Star Trek for me?
Go ahead.
In Star Trek Nemesis, when Worf beams the shuttle in space onto the Enterprise E, and I was like, wait, since when can you transport an entire shuttle?
Yeah, and
that's okay. And I mean that happened years ago too. So like, it never happened before. It never happened after. And every time I watch that episode, that movie, not episode. Every time I watch that movie, I'm like, that's really weird that he just beamed the whole shuttle onto the ship.
Well, I mean, as a Star Wars fan, like that's happened too, where you have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn running super fast, and it's never ever happened again. It's like, why can't we get force speed? Come on, guys.
So, the force run, yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely understand 100% what you're saying. It's like, you guys that was just poor writing.
Yeah, I mean, the Star Trek Nemesis has a lot of problems, but anyway. Okay, so yeah, I think let's talk. So I'm kind of just going through my notes right now, but I don't like sidelining the changelings. Not Vatic. What's her name? The Queen. Sorry.
Okay.
The Queen talks to Jack about how, the vindication of both of our species, talking about the changelings and the Borg being decimated by the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
1, you both had it coming. 2, I don't get changelings anymore. The changelings are not in this episode at all.
Correct.
And we know that there are changelings on starships and in the Federation, but we don't see them anymore. And I kind of wish that. Actually, do we want to talk about that now? No, I'll wait. I'll wait for that.
Okay.
So I think that and so she has this moment. It's the writers trying to bring it back to the changelings. How this was, the changelings are still important, but I don't get the sense that they are at this point. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the show chucked them out of an airlock in the 8th episode, and they're not in these 2 episodes. And I just think that maybe the show probably should have been 2 episodes shorter. Because we did talk about a little bit how it was kind of feeling a little like they were spinning their wheels with the Jack reveal. Or I think a lot of the stuff that we saw in those last 4 episodes should have been in these last couple of episodes should have been peppered into the beginning.
Yes.
And I'll use that to say that I think Data should have been in the show way earlier.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of things that could have been done differently, and I think shortening up the series would have been a negative for me.
Yeah.
I think keeping it the length it is, but like you said, peppering these things throughout the beginning and trickling into here, because now you're pretty much trying to conclude this series, this 10 episode series, in these 2 episodes, and it's like you guys could have taken so much of that stuff and you could have brought it through. Like, we still don't know who Vatican was talking, that face. We still don't
Oh, it's
know
the
who
Queen.
that face is.
It's the Queen.
But I mean, we can speculate that it's the Queen, that we're not all fully understanding that that's who it was, but we have a male voice and now it's a female voice. We have this concept that's missing of, okay, how did the Borg convince now the changelings to do this?
Yeah, that's true. You can always kind of. My partner brought up a really good question. Can the Borg assimilate changelings?
I think theoretically, no, because the whole reason why they're trying to get Jack's DNA and why they're trying to get Picard's body is so that they can do this without having the nanos in them.
Right. So if the Borg can't assimilate changelings, it does actually kind of make sense that now these two weakened species from the Federation would team up in this way.
Mhm.
But there is a sense that, like, you're right. I do think it is absolutely certain that the Queen was the face that Vadic was talking to. But you're right. The face exhibited a power over the changelings that we've never seen from the Queen.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's something or if it was just supposed to be a misdirect. And I'm kind of leaning into misdirect.
It seems that way, yeah, because unfortunately, I do like. I wonder what they have over the changelings that scares them so much.
Yeah. So since we're talking about so many issues, I'm actually going to bring up an issue that I've had in the show for a couple of weeks now, and I haven't brought it up.
All right, let's hear it.
I haven't brought it up because I've been enjoying the show, and I kind of didn't want to do too many negatives. But there is a problem that I've been having with the show since kind of the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I value the first 4 episodes of the show so much, we get some great Captain Riker, some great ship-on-ship action. There's some really awesome stuff in the first 4 episodes of the show. The first 5 episodes, sure. And we get a lot of great character moments between Picard and Riker and Beverly and Picard. But as soon as the other Next Generation characters came in, we've lost a lot of those character moments.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I think it's a real shame that we're not going to get anything between Seven and Raffi.
Yeah. And that's 100%, because that relationship that they had, and now that they don't have, it's missing so much.
Yeah.
Like we're not getting a conclusion to what's going to happen with them.
And I think you have the ability to have scenes in this next episode that will probably be about them, and they may rekindle their relationship in the last episode. But I don't think it was very fair to leave it to the last episode when you actually honestly did have room in the last couple of episodes to do something about it. Raffi just disappears in one episode with Worf. Mm-hmm. To go find Riker, and okay, sure, yeah, whatever. But like, you could have had a moment with Raffi and Seven, something to give them character moments. And this comes now that we're coming to the end of the episode, end of the season, and end of the series. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and frankly, I don't want more after this. I'm good. I want new after this, but. Yeah. We aren't going to get some character moments that I think are needed for a 10-episode reunion. You know, there's glimpses between Geordi and Data, but going back to like what I talked about with like Beverly and Picard, it should have been Beverly and Picard talking to Jack. We haven't really had a moment between Beverly and Picard after the first confrontation that they had in sickbay a couple of
with them, yeah.
Many episodes ago. And we're just not getting the kind of character interactions that I think made the beginning of the season so strong with the rest of the TNG cast. But it's specifically Geordi and Data, and a little bit Worf, although Worf gets a pass because he was mostly with Raffi for the beginning of the season.
For sure.
And Deanna and Riker had that moment in the prison,
in the jail cell too, yeah.
In the jail cell, so I'm happy with that. But Geordi and Data are kind of getting the shaft when it comes to kind of character moments. And those are the two right now, because Data was brought into the season so late, I think you should prioritize the two of them.
Yes. And I think they definitely try to do so, especially when we kind of get more into Frontier Day. But
Mm-hmm.
now that you say stuff like that, it really makes me think like the missed opportunity that they could have had with Miles. Like if Miles was working in this
Don't even
museum,
get me started.
I have to, I'm sorry. If he was working in this museum, that would have been perfect moment because we have now this concept of Geordi saying like, "Hey, we're there. I've been rebuilding the ship. I've been bringing it back to life, and I've been working on this thing for over 20 years." Like,
And
if
Miles is
Miles
there.
was simply just like on the floor, just sitting there working, and then they just come on to the bridge, and he's just sitting there working, and he's like, "Who turned on the lights?" And that'd be beautiful. Just give me something.
Well, we know that Miles became a teacher after Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just so many.
You're absolutely right, and like I think here's the thing. I think Miles's absence is actually egregious at this point because he started on Next Generation, right?
Yes.
He was in that first episode. He wasn't named Miles at that point, but he was in that first episode, and he kept popping up, and every single time he popped up, we learned more about him, and then he became a lead on the next show. And so to have him kind of like not be in here, it does feel like an absence. In the sense of like, if Tasha hadn't died and she wasn't in this season, are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, exactly.
But like that wouldn't happen because Tasha's dead.
Yeah.
But Miles isn't, as far as we know.
Yeah.
I guess he could have died. We don't know for sure. But I don't want to put that on the universe. Miles is alive. He's happy. He's with Keiko. His daughter's
Keiko probably got mad at him. She's like, "You're dead to me."
His daughter's in Starfleet. It's great. It's happy. But I do think that like we're missing character moments that I think we need in Fate, and we've instead kind of had fluff in place of it. And that's a real bummer. And like I'll give you like there are good character moments in the show peppered throughout, and I mentioned the stuff with Riker and Deanna, and even the stuff with like LaForge to Lore.
Yeah.
And when Data first comes out and they have that moment together, but because we had so many in the beginning between Riker and Picard and Beverly and Picard, and we kind of like shunted that off to the side. It's just, I think coming into the end, we needed more. It just kind of feels a little bit. It does feel like it feels like we're missing something in favor of just kind of spinning our wheels for the last couple of episodes. And then not just that, but I do think it's not just unfortunate. It's an egregious what's the word when you take something out, when you're missing something, not removal? Absence. Removal. Yeah. No, when you overlook something.
Okay.
When you overlook something. What's that word?
We know. We'll get to it.
We'll figure it out. You've kind of oversight. It's an egregious oversight.
Okay.
I did it. It's an egregious oversight that Seven and Raffi's relationship is just non-existent in this season.
Yeah.
And I get that maybe people don't like that relationship. It didn't get a lot of play in the second season either. They're mostly just bickering at each other. But I like them. I like Michelle Hurd as Raffi, and I like Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9. And the fact that we haven't gotten anything in regards to the relationship is honestly terrible. It's kind of queer erasure in my opinion. And I just don't think that I don't think you needed to do it. I think you could have had it in this season as just background information. They could have just been in a relationship and not had a lot of scenes together. But as long as we knew that they were in a relationship, that's still something. But because they broke them up and then then they only interact twice before this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Before this, I think it's only twice, and then we have the one with Shaw, and that's it.
Yeah, and I just. That's unfortunate, and I wish that wasn't the case because I think that this relationship should have been in this season. God, we're jumping around a lot. Let's go to Frontier Day. So they're like, okay, we need to go to Frontier Day. And Frontier Day, the whole fleet, supposedly every starship is there, although you never see a California class starship. So
see, this is why. Okay, yeah.
So you never see a California class starship. I'm just throwing that out there. If the final episode is a fleet of California class starships saving the day.
Did you see the Orville ship in the corner?
I'm joking. You mean the Defiant?
I was just joking.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of ships in this episode, which is wonderful because I love ships. I love ships so much. There's a lot of ships from Star Trek Online making their debut in this episode. One of them is actually really funny, and I only point it out because I found it very funny, and I want to share that funniness with you. There is a Star Trek Online had something called a Ross class starship.
Okay.
And ROSS, and it's kind of the 25th century answer to the Galaxy class starship.
Okay.
It kind of serves the same purpose, and it's very similar shape. We see a few of them in this fleet formation, but one of them is missing its nacelles.
Really?
Yeah, the VFX artist just forgot him.
Just flying around helplessly.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
That is cool.
But we see a Sagan class starship, which is what the Stargazer was in the second season. But we see in all her glory the Enterprise F.
Yes.
We got her, ladies and gentlemen. We got her. What'd you think about the Enterprise F?
You mean D?
No, the Enterprise F.
I thought Jordy said that he...
No. I'm not talking about the end of the episode. I'm talking about Frontier Day, the Enterprise F.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I enjoyed that because it's like... It's only great for people who are fans.
Yeah.
And it's like... It's just a nice little nod at like, we see you guys. Don't worry. Like, we know we brought the Borg back, but we also brought the F back.
So the Enterprise F is the starship from Star Trek Online. I don't know how much you know about Star Trek Online.
I know a little bit. I do know a little bit.
Like years ago, there was a competition to see what ship was going to become the Enterprise of that game. It was going to be the Enterprise F. This class won. I think it's a Odyssey class starship. So when we're bringing in a lot of Star Trek Online ships for the show, a lot of people speculated that if we saw the Enterprise F, it would be the Odyssey class, and sure enough, it is, and that's really cool. But not only do we meet the Enterprise F for the first and last time because she's being decommissioned, but we learn who's in command of her currently, which is 5-star Admiral Shelby.
Yes. What do you think of that?
I think it's really cool that they brought her back.
Yeah.
And I hate that they killed her.
Yeah. It's almost like, why?
Yeah, and not in the way that I don't like Rose's death, because I think Rose's death serves a narrative purpose, and I quite like that ending for that character. As bleak as it is, I do think it fits. Shelby's death is
absent-minded almost.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed, but her death scene clearly was a VFX change.
Yeah.
Because she just kind of sits down as she gets shot, and she's still like she doesn't have a reaction to getting shot.
It's just boom. Yeah.
And I'm just is she dead?
Exactly. It looked very weird to me, almost as if was she a changeling?
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, oh my god, that going back to my point earlier, thank you for bringing that up. I think she should have been a changeling.
It would have been great. It would have been great if that happened where she doesn't die. It just she just warps and she's like, well, you thought I was this person, but I'm not.
Yeah, so it could be she's having the speech, she's talking about the plot of Star Trek Enterprise, which is awesome. I really love that, by the way, that they're celebrating Star Trek Enterprise. That's all Frontier Day is.
Yes.
It's awesome because I'm a big apologist for that show. And when Picard gets there and the Titan is there and Picard's like, Starfleet, anybody who will listen, changelings have made us vulnerable. The Borg are back. We have to do something. Blah blah blah. And Shelby is the one to respond. Shelby, I do like that Shelby actually listens to Picard. She's like, hey, what's going on? You wouldn't be this frantic if this wasn't true. But I kind of wish the moment was surprise, sucker.
Yeah, exactly. You thought wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. That would have been better because that would have actually made the changelings part of this episode.
Yeah. How many star, like, what's the ranking for Picard as far as an admiral? Like, how many stars does he have? You know?
I don't know. I don't think we ever see how we do see him in uniform, like in a proper uniform in season 2. I don't remember maybe he's like a 1-star admiral.
Okay.
He retired pretty early. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember. Like, I just was curious to see because granted, yes, he's an admiral. His voice does carry a lot of weight, especially with all the shenanigans that he's done in his past.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would have been it's a poignant opportunity to reintroduce the changelings after them being absent for however many episodes, and now really
just this whole episode.
Yeah, and then re-showcasing them and saying like, hey, the big bad that you thought was the big bad, they're still here. They're just part of the big bad.
And that creates the idea that, like, okay, yes, the Borg and the changelings are working together because now a changeling is in charge of the flagship of the Federation and has and it's her that has implemented. It is this changeling now that has implemented this plan of the Borg, and so that to me is something. You know, I talk about this a lot on the Fake Nerd podcast, where like what we got here was kind of nothing. And at least doing the changeling reveal would be something, and I would feel a little bit better about that because that means that you didn't just kill another female character on the show.
Yeah.
Because that's getting a little gross now.
It just repeated over and over again.
One time I forgive, twice I'm like, oh, you're only killing the women.
Yeah,
that's a little weird.
For sure.
Third time because they killed Tavine. Stop killing women. I actually don't think Tavine identifies as a woman. I don't know if we know that for sure. But anyway.
Non-binary.
But Shelby is also Shelby has a kind of a terrible rap when it comes to Star Trek because early days, I was watching the Ready Room episode of this, and she was talking about how the reaction to her character has changed over the years, where the first time it's like, oh, you were such a bitch. Oh, I didn't like you, blah, blah, blah. And now it's like, oh, you're so strong-headed. Oh, you're so persistent. And people really like that about that character. And, she was kind of, I don't think she was right. I think, her episode's Best of Both Worlds, she's kind of a villainous force to Riker specifically. And it's kind of cool that she, it's cool to have that cameo because she's a cool character, and seeing her be this, she outranks both Riker and Picard, who she didn't prior the first time we saw. And that just kind of shows how slowly Riker and Picard went through the ranks and how far she came. And so that's really cool. But it doesn't none of that is diminished if she's a changeling. Yeah. And in fact, it keeps her alive. Correct. Because changelings, we know from the episode when we met Chuvok, as people have called him, that they keep their host alive. Yeah. So, at any rate,
opportunities.
Yeah, I just feel like the changeling absence in this episode is just weird. Honestly,
I did like her as being the figure of authority because it showed a little bit more of like this inclusiveness of being of women empowerment and showing like women leaders. So I like that, but the fact that they killed her off was like, you guys did something good, and then you just said, I'm gonna redcon everything.
And then the way they kill her
was horrible.
It's just so weird. It's just staged weird. It's just plotted weird. She doesn't even fly back being shot. She just kind of sits in her chair and gets shot. Yeah. And I'm just like, that's weird. That's just weird. I don't know why you did it that way. The the Frontier Day is showcasing this idea that now the fleet, and we saw this in season 2, when Gerardi Borg was trying to take over the fleet, that now this fleet is interconnected and can and can now talk to each other. And so here's another issue I have with this. I don't mean to shit on this episode. I do like this episode. There are things I like about this, but this is now the third time this plotline has happened. Fourth time this plotline has happened. Second in this show. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of done with interconnected ships being taken over.
Yeah. It's all of this. I think this was our fear. This was honestly our fear from day one. Was you guys are doing great. Keep up the good work. Let's keep it strong. And then, boom, they just.
I still think this is by far the strongest season of the show.
Oh yes, I'm not taking that away. I'm still enjoying it. I just think that they could have done things a lot more different. Granted, could I write for Star Trek? There's no way in hell I could even come close to what these folks are doing in the writing room. Yeah, so I commend them very much. But help us out. Come on.
It does feel like the Star Trek writers aren't talking to each other. Because we had this plot in Lower Deck season 3 with the Texas class starships.
Okay.
And then we had it again in Prodigy season 1 with there's you haven't watched Prodigy, but there's a device in the USS Protostar that will link to other ships and then turn on each other, and then all the ships will turn on each other and destroy themselves.
Okay.
So interlinking ships. The USS the Texas class starships were interlinked drone ships, and season 2 the Gerardi Borg tried to take over the interlinked ships to stop a wormhole, a transwarp conduit or whatever, and now this, and I'm like, all right, okay, done. I've seen it all. I've seen this 4 times now. I'm okay.
I don't need it anymore.
And there's another thing of like, I didn't realize how much Battlestar Galactica the show has influenced, by the way. Because the idea that they have to go back to an analog ship, quote unquote analog ship, is very Battlestar.
If anyhow they said, "Oh, frack."
Oh, I know, right?
That would have been priceless.
Because like the idea of these interconnected ships, these ships are networked, and someone could take them over. Yeah, the Cylons did that. That's why the colonies were all destroyed. And not just and the other thing is, I don't get it. I don't get why these ships are interconnected or why these ships are all networked, because they're
I think they said they wanted to make it so that it has formation, like proper formation, which is stupid.
But they don't just say that because like, yeah, we can get into fleet formation and we can protect ships and we blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, but if a ship is damaged, that's still going to be a damaged ship that you're just lugging along.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I get that. I'm sure there is an explanation that the writers had in their mind when they were writing this episode. And the only criticism I have about it is that I don't think it was clearly stated in this episode why this interconnectivity for these ships is beneficial for the Federation.
Yeah.
God, we have so much to get through. I'm so sorry, Cookie.
No, you're good. I did want to talk really quick about the Borg and Jack's interaction with taking the shuttle, going to meet the Borg based off of his glimpse memory that he has in his brain. He now found out where the Borg is and got to them, got onto the ship. The Borg ship's empty, besides what it seems like just the Queen.
Well, there's a couple of drones we see.
Okay. And then I did not like the fact that he thought he was going to do something.
Well, yeah, he's hot-headed, right? He's like, okay, I'm going to go there and I'm going to kill the Queen.
Yeah. And that was playing right into her. She was playing chess with him.
Yeah. I mean, nobody should try to outsmart the Queen. They'll always lose.
Yeah.
Actually, Data won.
I was about to say, there's only one time. There's been one time.
Yeah. Janeway won. Twice. It happened twice. Yeah, I'm not quite. I'm sure it's just there to kind of get Jack to the Queen, because we're talking about that. So we haven't really talked about Jack is a kind of transceiver
Yes.
for the Borg, for a specific genetic code that was mistaken as Irumodic syndrome.
Correct.
This is actually something I like about this episode. I like the idea that Irumodic syndrome was misdiagnosed in Picard. And the reason why he could still hear the Borg in First Contact in season 1 of Picard is because there was just this biological code implanted in him from his assimilation. I actually really like that. I thought that was a really smart idea.
Yeah, I did too. I really liked that. I liked how they kind of gave out this information, and it made Picard's character that much more interesting. The fact that he's like bioengineered without this coding of the assimilation still in him, he still has that, and he's able to now pass that on to his son.
And so his son becomes like a seed for the Borg. And that's actually something that I quite like about this episode, is that they is the way that the Borg have assimilated the fleet. The idea that that the code that was implanted in Picard's DNA that was mistaken as Irumodic syndrome is now in everyone who steps through the transporter, which explains why nobody wanted to use the transporter.
Yeah.
Which explains the transporter thing we've been hearing for a while. And because of that, and Geordi says that they've been assimilating us this entire time, we haven't known it. I really like that because because a full frontal assimilation has never worked on the Federation. The Borg have tried it so many times and they've always lost. And now this kind of weakened Borg state, that again, this post-Endgame weakened Borg have found a way to do it without anyone ever knowing, and they've already won. That's pretty cool.
Could you explain to me? Because I only got a chance to watch it once, but
not 3 times. Cookie, what's wrong with you?
Not yet. Why is it that the ones that are older than 25? Never mind. She said it. The frontal lobe. We're good.
I mean, I can give you the writer answer, and I could give you the in continuity stupid answer.
That way, give me the correct answer, because just the frontal lobe, 25 years old.
So it's so that our main characters don't get assimilated.
Gotcha.
That's really it. That's honestly the only reason why it's there. And the in continuity reason is kind of dumb, in my opinion. But it's it's technobabble. I can kind of forgive it. Where it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't. And they even say like we have assimilated your strong. So like the Borg wanted the strong people. They don't care about a bunch of fuddy-duddies. So
but I think if that's the case, like if the Borg and the Changelings are working together, Changelings should go after the older folks, and the Borg will simply just wait until they have Jack. Once they have Jack, then they now have the entire fleet, because you have all the old people who've already been taken care of by the Changelings, and then you have all the young people getting assimilated.
Yeah, I think the idea is that there's more young people in the Federation than there are old at this point. Yeah. So it really doesn't matter how many of the old people you kill, you're still going to have the superior force.
Yeah, it's probably like 5-1 or something like that.
Yeah, and like you also have the fleet just by the very nature of the stupid interconnectivity thing that the Federation was like, this is a good idea, and everyone's like, no, it's not. So I do like the idea that this, and I think it's harrowing, by the way, when everyone's being assimilated and Geordi is like, I got to get to my girls. And he even says like, computer, where's hold on, sorry, I missed something. Computer, stop. I have my Alexa's trigger word is computer.
Gotcha.
Because I'm a Star Trek nut. But he's like, locate my girls, locate Alondra LaForge, and the thing is like, the life signs of Alondra LaForge no longer are human compatible or whatever. And as we see, harrowing. Like honestly,
I gotta go.
The whole scene of watching everyone be assimilated, the vines coming through their face. Yeah, honestly, really effective in my opinion.
Yeah.
I really
the eyes going from like black or to black was really cool.
Yeah, I really like that idea of this quiet assimilation and then seeing everyone just kind of become these zombies that we know the Borg to be.
Yeah.
I truly, truly thought that was effective.
Same here. Same
There
here.
we go. A nice thing about this episode, finally.
I will say though, the ending of this episode. Okay, so I have not cried. But
I
the
don't want to
ending of
talk about that yet.
Okay, all right.
I don't
We'll
want to
save
talk
it.
about that yet because there's so
Sure.
many things to talk about before we get there. Shaw dies. Cookie,
Yes.
we willed that into existence.
I'm so happy with his character, and I stand corrected because at the beginning I did not like his character at all. He
I
grew on me
remember.
so much.
I remember. I liked
So
him and
much
you didn't.
so much throughout this entire season, and his death I thought was so well done, and the speech that he gives to 7 and 9, legit, I had a knot in my throat, and I was like, "Oh my goodness," because it was him finally accepting her for who she was and saying, like, "You're like so much more than a number one. You are a captain, and you are the captain of the ship, and you're gonna be amazing." And he called her. I'm getting all choked up. He called her 7 and 9. I was like, "Oh, this is so amazing."
The line, "You have the con 7 of 9."
Yes,
is very good. And
very, very good.
I really like Shaw. I've liked Shaw from day one. I loved that dipshit from Chicago. So like honestly, I was sad. I got really sad.
Yeah.
I like his storyline. And again, we've been talking about it for weeks. I never thought he was long for this show. I'm surprised he lasted this long.
Yes.
But I really like him, and I'm really sad to see him die. And I really like the thing he says at the end, and I like the fact that Picard said, I'm not leaving with unless everyone comes with me, meaning that Shaw, Seven, and Raffi were supposed to go with him. He always had the idea that it was just going to be all of them leaving, leaving the Titan. So I do really like that. Shaw dying kind of gives Seven and Raffi this kind of more motivation to take back the Titan. So, and I do hope for more from them in the next episode. But before that, even like I really like Shaw kind of problem solving. Okay, we're in the turbo lift. Okay, we can't. Where are we going to go? The maintenance deck. Nobody's going to be in the maintenance deck, and we can get a shuttle from there. We'll be fine. The effectiveness of watching the Excelsior be destroyed on just the screen.
Yeah, that's
so good.
Screen, yeah.
So good. I love that. Oh, speaking of ship titles, did you catch that Dr. Pulaski has a ship named after her?
No, I did not.
What the hell did that woman do to get a ship named after her?
Oh man, it's funny because I showed you guys, like I showed it on here on my comic book, and she's on there, and it's like you guys could have picked another doctor, but
I am no Pulaski apologist. I do not like Pulaski. I think she is a terrible character. I get that there are people out there who like her. That's cool. I hate her. So when I heard the USS Pulaski getting into position, I'm like, excuse me? Excuse me. How dare you?
I don't know, the USS Bashir. That would have been great.
Sure. Yeah. The USS Jean-Luc Picard. Picard's got a ship named after him now. Sure. But Pulaski, you need to be famous to get a ship named after you. What did she do that was famous?
Oh man, that's priceless.
The Hikaru Sulu. We see the Hikaru Sulu. There's a USS Uhura. Pulaski? No. I reject this ship. I reject this ship name.
I'm sure it probably got destroyed, so don't worry.
Good. Deserved it. All right. Anyway, there's 3 jokes I love in this episode, and one of them is when Geordi and Data run into the shuttle, and Data says, "What makes you think that there hasn't been destroyed yet?" Data, could you try being a little more positive? I hope we die quickly.
Oh, good stuff.
So funny. I thought that was incredibly hilarious. I didn't say it enough, but I think it's really awesome that Frontier Day is about the NX-01. That's awesome. Love that bit of continuity. Okay. I don't think I can put this off anymore. So they go to the Fleet Museum.
Yes.
And we got a hint that Hangar Bay 12 had something there. We've actually, the whole season has been hinting to this moment, if you think back on it. In the first episode, he says to Laris, oh, poor Laris, I hope she's okay. He says, it wasn't my first, but it was my favorite. There's the reference to Viridian 3 in episode 5 and Hangar Bay 12. So they've been kind of teeing this up. Mm-hmm. But for the last 20 years, Geordi has been restoring the Enterprise D.
Yes, and it was magical. Oh my goodness, dude.
I was sobbing. I'll be honest. I was sobbing.
I have not cried this entire season till I saw, and it's hilarious that Picard kind of mentions it, but just the atmosphere, the displays, everything was like, it transported me back to my childhood of watching that ship every single day, watching that ship and like getting to know it so personally. It was I couldn't help but just like, I just started getting choked up and I'm like, all right, hold it back. Nope, it's not holding back. And then just started rolling down when everybody was there. And it's such a somber moment. But then you have Picard saying a joke, which I thought was incredibly well delivered. And he's like,
oh my God, the carpet joke is incredible.
Yes, I loved it. And it was so perfect.
Being here with you all, I now know what I've missed the most. The carpet.
I love it. Was perfect because like if not, I probably still would be crying. Like how great that episode was in that moment.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that there was this like lightheartedness of the crew back again.
It's honestly like I do actually really like bringing back the Enterprise D for one last Next Generation story. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big fan of the Enterprise D. I'm not. Really? She's not my ship. I'm a Constitution guy through and through.
Okay.
So I will always prefer the original Enterprise. I think the fat one, as we called it in the first episode, very apt description. But I look, Next Generation was my Star Trek. Like I grew up I didn't really grow up with it, but like Next Generation was like really what I got into when it came to Star Trek. And so even though the Enterprise D may not be my favorite starship, even my favorite Enterprise, it still holds an incredible sentimental value to me when they walk on that bridge and they see everything. And it's so expertly recreated. All the Lacars look exactly as they did. I was watching the Ready Room episode again because they have a little talk about how they brought it back. And the way they shaped everything is exact, and the carpet layout is exact, and the way the glow on the control panels is because they had to recreate the fluorescent glow from the TV lighting to make it look accurate. And I didn't even know this, but they had you know how in Star Trek in the Next Generation, like there's a bunch of, they just push whatever button is in front of them. And it's like, just fire the torpedo. It's this one this week. It's that one this week. And, things like that. Apparently that's actually by design. Gene Roddenberry and Michael Okuda, who is the creator of the Lacars panels, who came back to redesign the Enterprise in the show. They've apparently had a discussion that in the 24th century, the controls would be intuitive. So if you want a button to do a certain thing, it would do that certain thing. Which I thought was actually really cool. And a really, just a really cool way to do that. But when they walked on that bridge and Majel Barrett's voice, oh my God.
It's like, you don't realize how much you've missed that voice till you don't have it, and then you get it back.
Yeah. I loved it. There's something that I do want to say about it, though.
Go ahead.
Look, I'm sure it cost them a lot of money to recreate that bridge. I'm sure it did, and I don't want to begrudge anyone. It looks incredible. They did it. They
choose your words carefully. Choose your next words carefully.
They freaking did it.
Okay. But
it's kind of a bummer that that's the only set they rebuilt.
I mean, what did you expect? They
Geordi in engineering, Cookie. I want Geordi in engineering.
But we're just getting this moment right now. Of course, we're definitely gonna get Geordi in engineering, 100%.
No, we're not. They didn't build the engineering set. They didn't build the engineering set.
Are you sure?
Yes.
They said they did not?
They only had enough money to build the bridge.
Okay, but let's be real. If you had to choose, would you choose to see engineering, or would you choose to see the bridge of your childhood ship?
I would have allocated some hallways from the Titan and put some money into recreating another set on the Enterprise D.
Okay, yes, that I can agree with. I won't take that away from you.
And I'm not begrudging the design team because I heard that they only had like 2 weeks to shoot on that 2 days. I think it was just 2 days to shoot on that set. And that's awesome. And it's incredible that they recreated that set. And it's so accurate that the bathroom, the door to the bathroom is back there. But like it would have been cool to be like, okay, well, we're on our way to the thing. Let's go into the conference room, or we need to go to engineering to fix a thing. Okay, well, because what we're going to get is if there's a problem in engineering, we're just going to get Geordi at the engineering station on the bridge, just clicking some buttons. And I'm like, I get that. That's going to be exciting, I'm sure, but it would have been really cool to see him have to go down to engineering and really like,
do
something down there. Him and Data. But that's just a small gripe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to ruin my enjoyment of anything.
Okay. All right. Because that moment for me was just so magical. And I was so jealous of anybody who was part of the crew for this show and had the opportunity to be on set the second that all of those people came out. They would have been like, all right, we need to get this guy out of here. He can't stop crying. We need to get him out. But
get the sobbing guy out of here.
It would have been such a magical moment to see these actors come back to a set after like 20 plus years, come back to a set. And it's just like how amazing that must be.
And the Enterprise D was also a ship that was destroyed before her time, right? Mm-hmm. They even say it in Generations. Like the only reason why the Enterprise D was destroyed was because they wanted the next movie to have a more cinematic starship with the Enterprise E. So it's actually really cool that they get to kind of have this closure on the starship that started this whole thing, this whole journey. And look, when they took their chairs, I cried.
Yeah.
I was like, excuse me, you're doing this now? And Beverly has nothing to do on that bridge because she does not belong there. She has this line. God bless her. God bless Gates McFadden. She's just got her tricorder and she's like, all systems operational. I'm like, good, you did it. You did it. I'm happy for you.
Oh, it was great. And then Worf was hilarious. I loved Worf's reaction.
Oh my God. When they're flying into the Enterprise D and it's like, well, obviously you can't use the Enterprise E, and just everyone side eyes Worf.
And he's like, it's my bad.
It was not my fault. What did you do to the Enterprise E, Worf?
Oh, so funny.
That's my favorite. That's my
favorite joke. Audacity to come back when he's on Enterprise D, and he's like, I like the Enterprise E better. It had more torpedoes. And it's like, really, dude?
I mean, he's right. Like the Enterprise E was a far more powerful ship. But the Enterprise D was a very powerful ship for her time. Like she's no slouch. And the Enterprise E did have more phaser banks. They had quantum torpedo capabilities. There's one other thing that I want to real quickly. The fact that they didn't rebuild the bridge is more of a lament, not really a gripe. I want to just say, like, I didn't expect them to. I don't want them to just find money somewhere to redo this. Like, you only got 2 days. You build the bridge. It's the most important set.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, the whole thing is screwed.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel bad for Worf, though, because in Star Trek Generations, he gets a chair.
Well, if you think about it, though, you already went and said that he's not fully complete with like rebuilding it. So
it's an office chair, Cookie. It's not a chair attached to a tactical. It's an office chair. It's literally a little swivel chair that he just rolls around in back there.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You could, Jordy doesn't have an office chair.
Touche. I did. Did you like the fact that Picard actually said a few of his one-liners?
I'll make it so and engage. Yeah. I like it. I always like it when he says engage.
Yeah, I loved it.
The chair thing, by the way, is just me being funny because I always laugh when I watch Star Trek Generations, and there's just Worf just on his little chair, just swiveling back and forth on tactical. It's the only time he gets a chair too. It's really weird. At this point in the story, Riker and Deanna need to show some concern for their daughter.
Yeah.
Who is probably in a lot of trouble at this point. Or assimilated.
Yeah.
But
it's crazy.
It's fine. We're not doing a story about Kestra. We're doing it about Jack and Alondra and Sydney. It's whatever. I do like Alondra and Sydney, by the way.
I like
a lot. What did Worf do? Loved the D. I want to talk a little bit more about 7 real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm wrapping up my notes now. 7 this season has been heavily implied to be a trans allegory.
Okay.
And that completely falls flat because of this episode. And I think that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot to do with how they've treated her this season with dead naming, her insistence on being called 709 rather than Annika Hansen. And you kind of... I hesitate to bring this up because I don't actually know a lot about this thing. I recommend anybody listening or watching to this go check out Jessie Gender's YouTube channel. She's wonderful, and she did a great breakdown of kind of this I believe accidental problematic queer coding of the Borg. Okay. And I highly recommend that because I think that with 709's trans allegory, and then you kind of have this idea that trans people are having a really shitty time right now in our history. And now you've kind of just coded all the fascist trans.
Yeah. Into one. Yeah.
Kind of rough. I don't think it was on purpose. I think it was an accident. And I don't want to say that there was any malicious intent in the, I'm sure it was all meant to be, sincere. And Star Trek has always been allegorical, and using 709 as a trans allegory is a good idea because of her insistence on being called 7. The other thing is, this is actually one that I think is incredibly funny that they accidentally stepped into, which is, well, now the boomers got to save the millennials from, they got to save the evil millennials.
Yes, that's funny. It's great stuff.
I don't think that was intentional. And I just think it's hilarious that ended up being, that is now the theme of the show.
Exactly. That's the main plot. It's so good.
I just thought that was really funny.
How does it feel to be a boomer, by the way, too?
Oh, shut up.
I'm right there with you.
I'm a millennial. Excuse me. Oh, you're right. These kids are technically Gen X, huh?
Yeah.
God damn it.
They're youngsters.
Whatever. The boomers got to go save the Gen Xers. Anyway, and that just comes to the fact that you needed to contrive a way to make sure that the adults don't get assimilated. Otherwise, you don't really have a show anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's no good to anybody if the entire crew just the Next Gen reunion ends with everyone just being assimilated. That doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Geordi and it's just kind of wrapping up my notes. Geordi and Data have a good moment, I think. When Geordi tries to go after his daughters and Data says, "No, we got to stay." There's also a good quiet moment between Picard and Data where he just puts his hand on his shoulder.
Yeah.
I like that. The idea that everybody above the age of 25 can't be assimilated was actually telegraphed a few episodes ago, which I didn't catch. Actually, last episode. Yeah, last episode. When Jack is looking for people to, in his mind, and he sees Sydney, and he hears Sydney's voice. He doesn't hear Picard and Beverly.
Yes, you are right.
Yeah, I thought that clever bit of writing, actually.
It is very good.
Okay. Let me see. There's a lot to talk about in this episode, and I want to be sure that I did. And I do like the aromatic syndrome. I said that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm good.
All right. One
Well,
more episode left.
One more episode left. One more episode. Cookie, how are you feeling going into the final episode?
Bittersweet. Very bittersweet. It's an end for me for 2 eras officially. One is the era that I have with you.
You're gonna make me cry.
The era that I have with you, but I'm hoping that my schedule will figure itself out and I will be able to come back again, do something. Because I'm very grateful for Michael Carl's introducing me to you and to the entire Fake Nerd podcast. So I'm very, very honored to call you a friend. I'm excited to see this thing kind of come to a close as far as the next generation getting their final signed off and in a respectful way. But at the same time, it is bittersweet to see something that I grew up watching and then this show that I have with you from my side end, unfortunately. But I do hope that in the future I will have time to come back. And yeah, it's sucks.
Well, you're always welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm going to miss you dearly.
Thank you, my friend.
I've really enjoyed talking about all these Star Trek shows with you. Discovery, Lower Decks, all of them. As far as the show goes, because I can't get too emotional right now, I'm waiting for the next episode. I got one more episode with you. I can't get emotional every single time we talk. As far as the show goes, like, I think this last episode is going to be action packed. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be. I think I said to you last week that even if the story doesn't land, I think the emotional story will.
Mm-hmm.
And to clarify what I mean by that is that the story of legacy, the story of what we pass on, the story of this family coming together for one last fight, that's all there.
Yeah.
And that's all there. That's all still going to be there in this final episode. And I think that's going to be really valuable to me. That's going to really land.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like season 2 of Star Trek Picard very much. However, I really value the moment between Q and Picard at the end of that episode, at the end of the final episode. I think that the emotional story of Q and Picard lands for me. And I think the emotional story of this crew, this legacy, this family is going to land for me.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that the story does. But now that we're 9 episodes in, I'm kind of preparing myself for the things that I know I'm not going to get.
Yeah.
So, which is fine. There's always more opportunity to do more Star Trek. You know, I'm still pushing for Star Trek. By the way, I've got an article out about Star Trek Legacy. Go check that out.
I will. I definitely
not just you, but like the audience, if you're interested. I talk about Star Trek Legacy. Everybody's talking about Star Trek Legacy. Now I do. So
where can they find it, by the way?
AtomicGeekdom.com.
All right.
On my it's also on my socials at BT McClure. But I'll talk about it in a minute. But I do think that while the story may end up being disappointing in some aspects, I still think there will be a lot of value in the final as far as emotion, as far as the emotional weight of everything. And I will, and even like the first 4 episodes are still incredible to me. Just that all that stuff in the first 4 episodes, the ship battle and things like that, is very valuable to me. So there's still a lot that the show has delivered for me that I still find value in, still find emotional weight in, and still find enjoyment in. And I hope the final episode will at least land on those aspects. If it can't land for me story-wise, I hope it lands for me in other ways. But maybe they pull a rabbit out of their ass, right? And they really
Miles.
they really nail it at the last episode and like really just deliver something incredible. And that could also be true.
Alexander comes out of the woodwork. He's like, "I'm here, guys. I'm here."
Just to get shot.
And just like stand there, just shot and stand there.
And just Miles shows up behind him. I did it. I finally killed Alexander. But yeah, so I'm a little mixed on going into the on the finale, but I'm hopeful. Overall I am pleased with the season.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Even if episode to episode it lands in various ways, but all right. So Cookie, for the penultimate time, where can people find you?
On Instagram at Just Little Podcast, on Twitter at Just Podcasting, on YouTube at Just Little Podcast. And you can go and check out the back catalog of Just Little Podcast. It's still up and running, so you can listen to a plethora of different things.
Of course, guys, this is Fake Nerds Watch. There's plenty of shows you could check out on Fake Nerds Watch. The back catalog, as Cookie mentioned, plenty of Star Trek shows. As we're nearing the end of Star Trek Picard season 3, there's plenty of Star Trek episodes that you can go back to, and there will be more coming. Even without Cookie, I will continue to do this, just slightly sadder. And so stay tuned. Next one is Strange New Worlds. Hell, I was never going to miss Strange New Worlds. No offense, Cookie.
None taken.
And there's also The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is actually ending around the same time as Star Trek Picard. So just stay tuned for the final episode of The Mandalorian's Fake Nerds Watch, as well as the final episode of this Fake Nerds Watch, which will probably be around, I don't know, maybe we'll do it quicker than the day before the episode airs.
There you go.
And of course, you can check out other shows on this network. Again, like this video, subscribe to this channel. You can check out Basement Arcade Pause Menu, the Animation Station, Fake Nerd Book Club, all shows we do on this channel. My show Conversation is actually probably out by the time you're listening to this. If not, it is coming out. The first episode with my friend Karis Lunn, the Journey into Fandom podcast is out. You can check that out. I'm really excited about season 2 of Conversation. Please check it out. And our new show, The Real Score, both audio and video feeds. Check them out. Subscribe to them. Please do. We're very proud of the show. This is where we talk about music and movies. The first episode of The Batman is out now, doing incredible numbers for us. And the next episode, The Mask of Zorro, will be out soon. So, yeah, man, The Mask of Zorro, that's a good movie, right?
It is a great movie. That's where I fell in love with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
That's where I fell in love with Antonio Banderas.
That too. I mean, the guy was so smooth.
There's sexy people in that movie.
There was a lot.
And you can, of course, check out the Fake Nerd Podcast. Fake Nerd Podcast is the mothership show where there's plenty of stuff. We just reviewed Renfield, the latest Dracula film, Renfield. Coming up, Evil Dead Rise.
Ooh.
Yeah, baby, a new Evil Dead movie. I'm so excited. I love Evil Dead. So stay tuned for all that on Fake Nerd Podcast. We go live every Sunday where we talk about movie news, comic books, movie reviews, book clubs, video games, all sorts of things. Big show every night on Sundays. Sunday night if you want to check out the live show. Otherwise, it's out wherever podcasts are listened to. Yeah, that'll do it. So check us out on our TeePublics and our Patreons if you'd like to support us financially. Linked below or on our website at fakenerdpodcast.com. Or Fake Nerd Podcast on all the socials. And I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. I also write for CBR.com, KaijuRamenMedia.com, and AtomicGeekdom.com. Real quickly, plugs, if you're still listening to this, KaijuRamenMedia.com has a new issue of the magazine out where I contributed a King Kong article. So if you like me and you want to read some of my stuff, you can check out my new King Kong article in the latest issue of KaijuRamenMedia.com. That's the magazine. Kaiju Ramen, the magazine, is out, so issue 9, I think. And AtomicGeekdom.com has a relevant Star Trek article about Star Trek Legacy and kind of what I want to see going forward with this century, essentially, with the next show, should there be a spinoff of Star Trek Picard. So yeah, stay tuned. Check that out. Please do. I work really hard on these things, and I would like people to read them.
I try to read them as much as I can. So
I appreciate you. Thank you.
No problem, friend.
So yeah, you can find all that stuff on my socials. BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. Once again, Cookie, socials.
Yes. Instagram, Just Little Podcast. Twitter, Just Podcasting. YouTube, Just Little Podcast.
All right, guys. Until next time, for the final time for Star Trek Picard and the Next Generation cast and Cookie. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.